Hi everyone, welcome back. Thanks for joining us today. We've got a brand new story to share with you, so let's begin. My name is Ruben. My wedding day was supposed to be one of the happiest days of my life. Over 100 guests were ready to watch me say, "I do," to the woman I'd loved for 3 years. But instead, I got a message from my fiancée. It said, "I can't do this, and I'm sorry. I'm not coming." I walked straight to the front of the guests and told them, "There won't be a wedding today. So let's not let this food and music go to waste. So let's celebrate the love of friends, family, and dodging a bullet." 72 hours later, everything changed, and I will be telling you all about it. So let's rewind a bit. Before the wedding that never happened, there was a beginning. Jasmine and I had been together for 3 years before we got engaged. It started at an event we both attended, organized by mutual friends. I had shown up with one of my close buddies, and Jasmine came in with another group. Throughout the evening, we kept crossing paths. By the end of the night, I found myself walking up to her and asking if she'd be open to seeing me again sometime. She smiled and said yes, then we swapped numbers. I remember thinking, okay, this could be something. From the very beginning, I felt something. I don't want to say it was love at first sight, but there was a pull, a deep curiosity about her. Still, I didn't jump straight into a relationship. I gave it time because I didn't want to rush into something based on infatuation. But once we started dating, it felt right. We had long conversations about life, goals, family, and the kind of future we wanted. It's hard to explain, but I genuinely believed we saw the world in a similar way. Looking back now, I don't know if I was seeing the truth or just seeing what I wanted to see. Maybe I was filling in the blanks with what I hoped she felt too. But back then, I was all in. I made an effort to show up for her in every way I could. Whatever she needed, I was ready to give. I loved her. I really did. And when I say I held nothing back, I mean that. I gave her the best parts of me because I believed she was the person my world had been waiting for. On her end, it looked like she felt the same. She was warm with my family and easily fit in during family dinners and gatherings. My mom adored her. My siblings joked that I'd hit the jackpot. She knew the right things to say, always acted supportive, and always appeared invested. When you're in love with someone, it's like your brain develops blind spots. You see things, but you find a way to excuse them. You notice little moments, odd behaviors, but you tell yourself, maybe it's not that deep. That's exactly how it was with Jasmine. At first, I noticed she had this need to be the center of attention, especially when we were out in public. I mean, there's nothing wrong with someone being outgoing or sociable. I thought it was just her personality. But over time, it became more than that. It wasn't just harmless fun or her being bubbly. It felt performative. Like she was always needing the laughs, the compliments, the eyes on her. If we were at a dinner or party, she'd find a way to be the loudest in the room, the most charming, the most interesting. And sometimes it crossed a line. There were moments when she flirted with other men. Not anything that could be pinned down as obvious cheating, but enough that it made me uncomfortable. When we get home, I'll bring it up. I'll tell her straight. That didn't feel right. You were flirting. She brushed it off like it was nothing. You're overreacting, she said. It's just harmless. You're the one I go home with, so what does it matter? And, in that moment, I felt like I was probably overreacting or being insecure. So I let it slide. But I still told her I wasn't comfortable with that kind of attention-seeking behavior. She promised it wouldn't happen again. Said she didn't mean any harm. And then there were her friends. That's a whole different story. Jasmine's inner circle was made up of people who, honestly, didn't seem to value boundaries. Some of them looked at me like I was this boring, too nice guy who didn't match Jasmine's energy. Still, despite all of this, I stayed. Because when things were good with Jasmine, they were really good. I clung to those moments, convinced that the flaws were just bumps in the road. Nobody's perfect, right? So I proposed. Even with all the things I was unsure about, I went ahead and got down on one knee. I had the ring, I had the words. And when I asked, she said yes, a long pause that seemed like hesitation, but I convinced myself she was just stunned. That reaction was because she was overwhelmed with joy. The next morning, she posted a picture on Instagram. Her hand stretched out to show off the ring, captioned, "I said yes ring to a life of stability and love." I guess I should have listened to that gut feeling that told me something was off. But instead, I doubled down on love. I told myself she chose me, and that meant something. I didn't realize then that sometimes people say yes not because they want you, but because they want what you represent. And that realization didn't hit until much later. So, after the engagement, things moved quickly. Jasmine threw herself headfirst into wedding planning like it was a career-defining project. To her, every detail had to be perfect. She took control of it all. At first, I thought she was just excited. I mean, who doesn't want their big day to look amazing? But the deeper we got into it, the more I started noticing something that didn't sit right. She wasn't just excited. She was obsessed with how things would look. The wedding dress had to photograph well. The venue needed that magazine spread vibe. Even the food menu wasn't about what we liked. It was about what would impress the guests. And anytime something went slightly off course, she would snap. I'd never seen her like that before. What bothered me more, though, was how hard it was to talk to her about anything real. I'd try to bring up things like where we'd live after the wedding, how we'd handle finances, and what kind of life we both envisioned once the confetti settled. But every time I brought up those topics, she'd pivot. "We'll sort it out later," she'd say, or "let's just get through the wedding first." And then it would be back to debating centerpieces or choosing between gold and rose gold utensils. It felt like she cared more about the performance of a marriage than the actual partnership. About a month before the wedding, Jasmine started pulling away. It was subtle at first, but it grew more obvious with time. She used to stop by my place regularly, even on days when she had a lot on her plate. But suddenly, she just stopped showing up regularly. Days would go by, and I wouldn't see her in person. At first, I chalked it up to her being busy, because wedding planning can get hectic. But when even our phone calls became a hassle, like she was checking a box or calling out of obligation, I couldn't ignore it anymore. So I brought it up. I told her I'd noticed the distance, and it felt different, like she was emotionally checked out. She told me it was just the stress of planning everything and pressure from work. But here's the thing, work wasn't anything new. She'd had the same workload for a while, and we were both planning the wedding, not just her. It didn't add up, so I gently pointed that out. I just wanted to understand what was going on. But instead of talking it through, she got defensive and flipped the script, asking me if I didn't trust her anymore. Made it sound like I was being paranoid or insecure. Her response felt manipulative, like she was trying to make me feel guilty for caring. I didn't push further after that. I didn't want to argue or cause more stress with the wedding around the corner. So I let it go, on the surface. But deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I didn't want to believe it at the time, but in hindsight, she probably was never fully sure, and I was too in love or too blind to see it. On the day of the wedding, the sun was out, the weather was perfect, and the garden venue, meticulously decorated with strings of white lights, cream and blush florals, and rows of elegant white chairs, looked like something straight out of a bridal magazine. It had been set up to host 100 guests, most of whom were already beginning to arrive in their tailored suits and colorful dresses. My family had flown in from different parts of the country just to see this day happen. I was in the dressing room with my best man. We were adjusting my bow tie and cracking jokes. I remember he was telling me something dumb about forgetting the vows at his own wedding when, out of nowhere, a random thought popped into my head. What if she doesn't show up? It was like a cold breeze passing through a warm room. I shook it off instantly, thinking I was just being paranoid. Of course, she'll come. She loves me, right? And then my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen, expecting a quick update, maybe a few minutes late text. But when I opened the message, it read, "I can't do this. I'm sorry. I'm not coming. I thought I could settle, but I can't. Please don't hate me." My mind went blank as I couldn't make sense of what I was seeing. Logan leaned over my shoulder, read it, and gasped. For a moment, neither of us said a word. There was nothing to say. My fiancée, the woman I had loved, the one I was about to vow forever to, had just ended it all over a text message 5 minutes before the ceremony. I don't know what came over me, but I felt calm. I got up, adjusted my bow tie one last time, and walked out of the dressing room. The officiant was near the stage, looking confused as I approached him, still half-dressed. I leaned in and whispered, "Slight change of plans." Then I walked up onto the stage, turned to face the crowd. The whole garden went silent. I took a deep breath and said loud and clear, "There won't be a wedding today. My fiancée just texted me moments ago that she rejects me. She wants freedom. And honestly, I don't mind. So let's not let this food and music go to waste. You all came to celebrate love. So let's celebrate the love of friends, family, and dodging a bullet." The silence that followed was thick enough to cut anything. I stepped down and started walking away when my best man grabbed the mic and added, "To Ruben, one hell of a man who knows his worth." It was like his voice snapped everyone out of the shock. The DJ picked up on the cue, and soon enough, music started playing. My family began to walk up to me. Jasmine's family didn't say a word. They quietly slipped out of the venue one by one, probably too embarrassed to face anyone. I didn't bother looking for them. I had my own people to talk to. I went over to my parents, who were heartbroken but supportive. My mom hugged me, so tight I could barely breathe. I hit the bar afterwards. I kept drinking until everything blurred. My emotions were all over the place. With every glass, I kept thinking about the signs I'd ignored. By the time I got home, I was a mess. I don't even remember locking the door. I collapsed right there in the living room, suit half on, shoes still on, and passed out cold on the floor. Just me, the silence, and the realization that I had been in love with the idea of her more than the reality of who she was. That day was supposed to mark the start of a new chapter in my life. Instead, it became the day I dodged the biggest emotional bullet I never seen coming. The day after the wedding that never was. I woke up on the living room floor with a splitting headache and a mouth that tasted like regret. I sat up slowly, surrounded by the mess I didn't remember making, with my phone buzzing with missed calls. Everything hurt. I just sat there, quietly, staring at the wall, trying to make sense of how someone I gave my heart to could switch up that easily. The following day was when I started to feel a little more like myself. That's when I noticed that one of Jasmine's friends had been calling me nonstop. I ignored the calls at first, assuming it was more damage control or someone trying to guilt-trip me into forgiving Jasmine. But something in me said, "Pick up. Hear it out." So I did. When I finally answered, she sounded like she had been debating whether to speak up. She told me she felt like I deserved to know the full truth about what actually happened behind my back while I was busy preparing for a wedding. Turns out, Jasmine never really let go of her ex the way she claimed she had. She painted a picture for me that they had ended things clean and had no contact. That was a lie. They stayed in touch. And from what this friend told me, they had this ongoing friendship that was more than what she made it out to be. She had kept that door open the whole time we were together. I didn't know. I had no idea. But it gets worse. The day before the wedding, Jasmine went to see him. She spent the night there, slept over, woke up next to him the next morning, and realized she couldn't go through with marrying me. Just like that. 3 years of my life, tossed aside in a single morning. She looked at him, and it made sense to her that I wasn't the one she wanted. Maybe I never was. Maybe I was just the safer option, the backup plan, the man who made sense on paper, but not the man who made her heart race the way that bad boy energy did. And I won't lie to you, hearing that felt like someone was slicing through my chest with a dull blade. I didn't even have the strength to be angry at that point. I was just listening in silence, because what do you even say to that? I thanked the friend because, at least now, I had the full picture. And as painful as it was better than wondering. Because now I knew this wasn't about cold feet. This wasn't about fear of commitment. This was about choice. And she chose him, not me. The next day, my phone buzzed. It was from Jasmine. She wrote, "I made a mistake. I panicked. Please talk to me." I read this message twice, then picked up my phone and I called her. She picked up immediately. The moment I said hello, She was already sobbing like a child who had dropped everything and realized too late that there's no getting it back. She kept saying she was sorry, kept saying she didn't mean to hurt me, that she got scared, that she didn't know what came over her. I let her speak, and then I asked her one question. If you needed freedom so bad, why aren't you with your perfect man right now? There was a long pause. I could hear her breathing shift, like the lie had been caught in her throat. She tried to say she had left him for me. She realized it was a mistake and wanted to fix things. But I wasn't stupid. I could hear it in her voice. That hesitation. That scrambling to say what she thought I wanted to hear. So, I pressed her again. And that's when it all came out. Turns out, the ex was never serious about her. She told me that he didn't want a relationship, that he wasn't the person she thought he was. That after the night she spent at his place, she woke up the next morning and realized she had ruined everything for someone who didn't even want her. And I said to her, with all the finality I could muster, "Don't call me again, because I'm also not serious with you." Then I ended the call. That should have been the end of it. But no. Over the next 24 hours, my phone kept going off. Message after message. Long paragraphs about how she was confused, how she was scared, and how she still loved me. She said she couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, couldn't breathe without me. At first, I didn't even open them. But then I started reading, and all I could think was, where was this desperation when I was all in? Where was this energy when I was planning our life, and she was busy rehearsing her escape? Then, as if the texts weren't enough, she showed up at my apartment. She knocked. She waited. She knocked again. I stood behind the door, but I didn't open it. I didn't even say a word. Eventually, she left. She wanted her way back in, but what she didn't understand was that love is not a revolving door. You don't leave, taste the world, get burned, then come back like nothing happened. At least not with me. I've had time to sit with everything. But looking back now, it's clear as daylight. She never truly valued me the way I valued her. I was never her first choice. I was the stable one, the fallback plan, the man you marry when the thrill doesn't work out. And that's not love. That's convenient. So if you're still watching this and you've ever found yourself being treated like someone's backup plan, hear me clearly. Don't ever give a second chance to someone who saw you as a second option. Love should never feel like a consolation prize. But that's just my story. Let me know in the comments, what would you have done?